beautiful out here today in Gympie. It's about 21, 22 degrees. There's a bit of a breeze. We're in Memorial Park, and I'll tell you why. Because we went to a Thai place that is a favourite for us. We got Thai takeaway food, and for $14.50 they had a lunch special, and it has chicken, satay, rice, turmeric. It's just beautiful. Yeah, so have a look at this. It's massive. So Paul and I shared one, and I think for $14.50 it's really good value. Have a look at that. Looks pretty good, but of course, looks are one thing, you've got to taste it. Let's have a taste. And just taste it, even not tasting the chicken and just tasting the sauce. Oh, it's delicious. Something about Thai food, isn't there? You can really, you know, the spices that they use. It's really unique. It's a little bit spicy. It's just delicious. Gympie has lots of places that we could have chosen. They've got cafes and bakeries and things like that. But I'm really glad that we're doing this one. And you can put your camera down now if you want to have some. What do you think?
Yeah, it's really nice.
Is it good?
Yeah. We've had it here before, and it was delicious that time. Like a lot of places, they got inundated with the flooding earlier in the year, but they've come back. Not as big now, it's mainly takeaway, but it's delicious.
It is delicious. That's plenty for 2 people, isn't it?
Yep.
You know, we've enjoyed this Thai food so much in Gympie that we've even talked about driving from home up here just to get the Thai food. It's that good. It's really, really good. And that would be a fair drive for us. It's about maybe 67 kilometres, something like that. So it would be a long drive, but you know, it's so delicious, it would be totally worth it. We thought we'd show you around Gympie today because how often do we all drive straight through the Bruce Highway, keep going, and we don't stop at Gympie? And Gympie is worth a stop. We often stop here because they have a Tesla charger in one of the shopping centres, and we'll have a little walk around and we'll get a cup of coffee. But it's a beautiful old heritage town, and it has a population of about 55,000, which is not a lot of people, but it definitely has a real country feel to it. Gympie is situated on the Mary River, and that's a good thing, but it also can be a bad thing because in heavy storms the river floods and the township can flood also. And with the most significant weather events that we've had in recent couple of years, the Gympie has really taken the full brunt of some of that flooding. And we can see that as you're going through the town today, you can see there are a lot of shops that were inundated with water. A lot have come back, a lot have been refurbed, a lot of new ones come in. I mean, it's really nice to see some, you know, new life coming into the town. That's great. There's still got a way to go. You can still see very high watermarks in some of the shops. And I guess we were conscious not to film too much of that because it's sad for everybody involved, and we don't want to, I don't know, I don't feel comfortable. Having been through a flood ourselves, I don't feel comfortable putting too much emphasis on that, other than to say that I think it's definitely worth a visit, coming here, have a walk around, have a look at some of the beautiful old heritage buildings from the gold rush. I'll tell you something interesting about Gympie. Gympie was originally called Nashville. Can you imagine that? Nashville. That's what it was called. It was called Nashville after a guy called John Nash. And John Nash became famous for being the first person to strike gold in Gympie. And it was a big deal at the time because at the time the township of Nashville was suffering from a huge recession. In fact, all of Queensland was. And they're saying that this gold find in 1867 by Nash, who was only 23 years old at the time, that started off the gold rush in Queensland and turned around everything for the state and made the state prosperous and, you know, everything going great again. So isn't that interesting? And so the town was changed from the name Nashville to its current name Gympie, and that's after an Aboriginal name called Gympie Gympie, which means the stinging trees. And if you may or may not have seen, we did a video last year on the stinging trees, and they're the trees that have the great big the leaves, and these leaves, drop on the ground. You've got to be careful that you don't walk on them or touch them because they are very, very dangerous. So how's that? Gympie, stinging trees, and before that called Nashville. Now, I bet there's a lot of people out there that didn't know all that, and that the gold rush started here in Gympie. And in fact, the place that it started, they ended up calling it Nashville Gully, but it was actually where the beautiful town hall is today. And the town hall is so beautiful and has been refurbished and looks very grand, standing up there in the middle of town with its clock tower. So there you go, there's a bit of news about Gympie. Definitely worth a visit.
This is the bandstand in the Memorial Park, and you can see the damage caused by the floods. This would have gone right under. Actually, I'm quite surprised. The park has been cleaned up nicely. But
so when was this? Which flood was this from?
Oh, I think it was the February one.
February this year.
February or March, I can't remember. Remember when it rained? It was just torrential for 4 days, even where we were.
Yeah. So it was about 7 months ago, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Really? Yeah. You can see a lot of work is getting done.
Yeah.
How do you like the flowers? They're beautiful, aren't they? And I wanted to tell you a story because there was a reason that we went to Gympie today, and it was all because I had read this article online in the ABC News this morning. And the article that I read was about a young lady who was an interior designer in Sydney for 8 years, and then during COVID she went back to her mum's place. Her mum lives in Gympie on 1.5 acres, and during the COVID time, so I think this is probably early 2021, and she started growing flowers, and she loved it so much she decided she wouldn't go back to her job in Sydney, and she'd stay at her mum's growing beautiful flowers like these. She grows snapdragons and stock and dahlias, all these beautiful flowers. She started off a little business by subscription. She had a little flower studio on her mum's property. Locals can drop in and buy flowers from her, but they can also subscribe, and she can drop in some flowers to them once a week or once a fortnight or once a month to local people in the Gympie area. So it was a really good idea. But in the floods this year, I think they were the February floods, Gympie got smashed because of the Mary River going all through Gympie. This young lady, Erin, her flower farm also was devastated. And as the story goes, she made a little comment on social media showing empathy for people who had lost their business and their livelihoods during those floods. And she said, I know what it feels like. I felt like throwing in the town myself, because my whole flower farm, my whole life savings, everything's gone with the floods. So the Gympie community got behind her and they supported her, and she had a donation, I think something like 1,000 snapdragons from a local business. And the locals community supported her, and she's got her business up and going again, and she's doing fine now from what I can see. So Paul and I went in to see this flower farm, and until today I had no idea that here in Australia we're importing hundreds of millions of flower stems from overseas. So when we buy our flowers in supermarkets and places like that, it's quite likely that they're coming from overseas and they're not locally grown. So Erin, all of hers are grown locally, and she does a lot of these, less common or more delicate species of flower, because she's only servicing, her local community. So they don't have to travel long distances. Just so beautiful, aren't they? So we thought we'd pop in today, and we went to a little flower farm. We told her that we had read her article today in the newspaper, and she was absolutely lovely, and her mum was there and waved, and it was great. And we took a couple of little shots for you. From what we could see, there wasn't a lot that was actually flowering right then, but I think she has more flower beds out the back of her studio, and also it was the end of the afternoon. How's that? That's a good story, isn't it? It's great to hear when the local communities gather around, but we really have to head home now and look at them, they're so beautiful, and put them in some water. And we hope you enjoyed our little video today, a little bit different, tell you a little bit about Gympie, show you a little way around. These rural communities, places like Gympie, they really need support. You know, it's great if tourists can support them by popping in, even if it's just to have a coffee. Pop in, have coffee, morning tea, lunch, dinner, stay overnight. They can really do with a bit of a boost, and that was our little contribution today. And that delicious lunch we had, you know, we were well rewarded, weren't we? Okay, see you next week.